What if Mr. House had gotten the platinum chip on time? What would have been different? What impact would it have had on Vegas and the other regions? What might Mr. House do with all that new power and additional time? This is the core of one of the most interesting what-if scenarios presented by Fallout, and the implications run deeper than most people realize. Because this is not simply a question about a game mechanic or a missed delivery. It is a question about the most dangerous and intelligent man in the history of the American Southwest. A man who predicted the end of the world 12 years before it happened and spent every one of those years building a wall around the city he intended to save. Atlas shrugged. What if I told you that the most prominent and well-known robotics company in the Fallout universe, responsible for the most iconic piece of tech that is the Pip-Boy Robco, was founded by Robert Edwin House when he was just 22 years of age? By his 30th birthday, he was a billionaire, 30 times over. With all of the acquired money and wealth stemming from his genius, he secretly amassed controlling stakes in many businesses, such as Repcon Aerospace and the Lucky 38 Hotel. He dated Hollywood stars. He appeared on magazine covers. But then, suddenly, he vanished from public life entirely. He had withdrawn into the Lucky 38 in Las Vegas to implement a plan that none other than him on planet Earth considered or could view as necessary. On April 14, 2065, his computer simulations came to a single definitive conclusion. There was a certainty that within 15 years, nuclear war would destroy the planet. It wasn't that it could happen. There was a definite chance that it would happen, so he began to build for it. He created a network of supercomputers that could use satellite links to stop any incoming missiles from exploding by sending them disarm codes while they were still in the air. He equipped the Lucky 38 with laser cannons. He created a life support system directly connected to the systems of the Lucky 38. He even went so far as to wire his brain to an enormous supercomputer and designed a high-tech computer chip that would store all the software he needed for his systems. It was named the Platinum Chip. It was printed in Sunnyvale, California on October 22, 2077. It was to be delivered to Mr. House the following morning, but as we know from the infamous date, the bombs fell first just a day after. The delivery reached its destination. In his own words, suboptimal performance, admittedly. If only the Platinum Chip had arrived a day sooner. One line from the most calculated man in the history of the wasteland. And it does change everything about how the post-war world was supposed to actually look. And today, we will answer all these questions. So, what would happen if the chip arrives on time? What would Robert House be able to do with 200 years fully functional? And how would that affect the Mojave, the NCR, Caesar's Legion, and the whole series that now makes Robert House come alive thanks to the same technology he was always destined to have? The Iron Dome. In order to fully understand how the Platinum Chip might have changed everything on day one, it becomes essential to define exactly how House's visionary defense grid actually worked, or rather, how it did not work. The number of warheads targeted towards Las Vegas on October 23, 2077 was 77. House's two mainframes successfully predicted and transmitted disarm codes for 59 of these warheads. The laser guns mounted on the roof of the Lucky 38 eliminated 9 others. This amounts to 68 warheads neutralized through the efforts of one man's personal defense network with unpatched and incomplete software. Raul Tejada, a ghoul who survived the bombs in Mexico City, remembers seeing House's defense system take out the missiles coming their way from such a distance. Only 9 made it through. None struck the Strip directly. Instead, they exploded on Black Mountain, Mesquite Camp, and the region around Cottonwood Bay, leaving permanent scars on the Mojave landscape for 200 years to come. This is what House makes clear in his dialogue with the Courier. The Platinum Chip possessed critical software enhancements not only for the Securitrons, but also for the entire missile defense network. The one that successfully neutralized 68 of the total 77 missiles was merely an incomplete version. It was an incomplete version of the base software that House himself had developed, and which wasn't up to his standards. The odds of success are greatly improved with the upgraded version with the Platinum Chip. There would have been no strike on Black Mountain. The highways south of Vegas are spared any damage. Survival in the Mojave is redefined from day one. But this is just the start, because the chip also had stabilization life support software for House. Without it, his own struggle to save Las Vegas nearly killed him before the wasteland even began. Breaking point. This is the era of House's past that the majority of players tend to tune out or simply ignore. But this is the most crucial era in all of New Vegas's history, and one that the Platinum Chip's arrival on time renders nearly obsolete. In the first 5 years following the Great War, House remained awake, alone, and trying to prevent the Lucky 38's fusion reactor from destroying itself. Without the chip's upgrade to the life support systems and the reactor control systems, all systems he was plugged into ran in emergency conditions. power failures, system meltdowns. 5 years of fixing problems in the systems using software that had not been designed for such conditions. Following 5 years of trying, House finally restarted his main data core, only to fall into a coma shortly afterward. Not for days, or even weeks, for decades. It was not until 2138, 61 years later, that House regained consciousness. He then waited another 136 years, functioning at a small percentage of his intended capability. The Securitrons that he employed were running on the Mark I version of the OS, sufficient only for perimeter maintenance but far from the force multiplier that the newer Mark II version would have enabled. All of House's history since the end of the war can be traced to these 5 wasted years. The coma, the subsequent recovery, the rush to build New Vegas prior to the arrival of the NCR, even the concessions made in the New Vegas Treaty, can all be traced back to the reactor emergency that was designed to be prevented by the chip's control software. Without those 5 years, everything is different. Given that the Platinum chip has been installed prior to the bombing, House manages to implement the upgrades in time. All of his defensive mechanisms have been maxed out. His lifelines are calibrated properly. Even the problems with the reactor never occur, as they are managed successfully without any trouble. Robert House does not lapse into a coma. House remains awake, able to control both the AI system as well as a whole army of Mark II Securitrons in a city which has fared much better from the atomic bombs than any other place in the world. What exactly does an awake and operational Robert House get up to in the first 2 centuries in the wasteland? The answer changes everything. The bear according to the game's timeline. Vegas, in House's absence, becomes a no-man's land inhabited by the various tribes of descendants from vault dwellers and pre-war survivors. In the year that House awakens, 2138, these tribes had already been living in the area without any guidance for about 60 years. In order to stabilize the region, when he realizes that NCR scouts are approaching the Hoover Dam, he has to start recruiting the tribes that would later form the 3 families, construct the strip walls within a few years, and establish New Vegas within the period before the NCR arrives with its military. It is an urgent task that House undertakes, fully aware of its difficulty. The 3 families are comprised of raider gangs who have been transformed into casino owners due to lack of choice. Freeside is left without any governance, as House does not have enough capacity to govern and organize both areas at once. With House conscious starting from 2077 onwards, none of this improvisation is necessary, as the tribes which have settled down near the remnants of Las Vegas in the early decades after the war would have been faced with something completely different. A living and breathing town protected by functioning Securitrons operated by an intellect which has remained conscious for all their lifetimes. With these tribes still in their malleable stage and not yet fully ingrained with the raider ideology of their generations, House can employ them for the construction of his town walls and setting up of its economy. In contrast, by the time the NCR's scouts have reached the Mojave, House wouldn't have something it must desperately sell to them. Instead, House would be selling them a flourishing city untouched by the bombs with a Mark II Securitron military force, complete with trade connections and a well-developed legal system in place. Negotiations for the New Vegas Treaty would be much more favorable for House, because the power supplement from Hoover Dam as well as the NCR's forces at McCarran were things that House offered in desperation. The House that has been working at maximum efficiency for decades will get entirely different terms, or indeed, might not even want the NCR military support, and that changes everything about the balance of power in the Mojave for the events of 2281. The Bull. The repercussions of House's early awakening cannot be confined only within the Mojave, since the politics of the American Southwest in 2281 are not only about what transpired within New Vegas, but all that occurred in the previous 2 centuries. Not only the NCR would be affected by this change of events, but it would fundamentally alter the fate of one of Fallout's most brutal and unforgiving factions. Caesar's Legion Edward Sallow, who would become Caesar, formed the Legion in 2247 by employing his familiarity with warfare and Roman strategy, which allowed him to turn the Blackfoot tribe from a defeated band of raiders into victorious conquerors. For the next couple of decades, Sallow took over tribes after tribes in the lands beyond the Colorado River, obliterating their former cultures and individuality and building an army through shared identity. In 2271, the Legion had gained enough strength to obliterate the Desert Rangers and was ready for the first battle of Hoover Dam. A house that is awake, an active house armed with its Mark II Securitrons, will not have to wait until 2274 before asserting itself in this area. Its reach in intelligence gathering and economic activities starts sooner and in a more aggressive way. Caesar's ways of accumulating power are being watched, nor does House need to react with military action. House's strategy is always one that begins with economics and strategy and then ends with military action. It is a house that has had years and generations to cultivate trade alliances, gather intelligence, and establish its financial dominance in the southwest. This would work against the model of conquest that Caesar actively used. At minimum, the legion at hand would be smaller and less mobile than before. At maximum, with decisive action from House, once he learns of Sallow's project within the first few decades of its construction, the legions never reaches any significant size come 2200 A1. Either the first battle of Hoover Dam never happens, or it is fought to a resounding success for House's side, meaning that any attempt of the legions to move west never succeeds. Either the Mojave campaign of the NCR is shortened drastically, ending the campaign in short order, or it does not happen at all. The dam. The Hoover Dam is the most strategically valuable place in the Mojave wasteland by far. Whoever controls it holds the power grid for the whole wasteland. In this timeline, the dam is operated under the control of NCR due to a treaty that House finds constraining and plans to nullify following victory in the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. In the current timeline, the reason why House needs NCR help during the First Battle of Hoover Dam in 2277 is that the Mark I Securitrons cannot provide sufficient force on its own. Therefore, it has to form an alliance with the army of the NCR. The treaty that gives NCR military access to McCarran and control of the dam is made for this very reason. Mark II. Securitrons mean no need for the help from the army of the NCR in controlling Hoover Dam. These Securitrons, armed with grenade and missile launchers as well as automatic self-repair features under the Mark II software, are each superior in ability to anything the regular NCR forces can muster in the Mojave. An entire army of these robots lies in the Securitron vault below Fortification Hill, prepared for just such deployment. There is no longer any need to make any power concession. Penetration of the Mojave by NCR forces is restricted only to what the House deems to be commercially beneficial. Reactor operations within the Lucky 38 function perfectly from the start. No backup generators needed. No 5-year crisis. No systems reliant upon NCR goodwill. A Hoover Dam operating independently under House's command produces an excess of money and energy used solely for his own growth. The towns on the eastern side of New Vegas, Boulder City, Primm, Novak, all those located near the road, operate within the real security of a power that has the ability and willingness to project power to defend them, not from any humanitarian motives. It is easier for trade when there are safe roads, which translates into more caps for New Vegas. The end of the Brotherhood. The first major problem created by the altered timeline is that of the Brotherhood of Steel. In the game's own timeline, the Mojave chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel has been crippled by years of terrible military defeats against the NCR in California, leading to their near-complete destruction at Helios 1 in 2278. The Brotherhood of Steel is far from the mighty military force it once was. In House's opinion, they are a dangerous force to be around for too long, as their philosophy of technological sequestration is completely at odds with House's economic theory. He wastes no time ordering their destruction, which, when examined through the game's Independent Vegas ending, shows his reasoning to be sound as a brotherhood saved by the player takes control of Helios 1 when the NCR collapses. But in this alternate timeline, the Brotherhood question surfaces earlier. Having monitored the regional politics of the area for decades, House realizes how badly the Brotherhood is faring in California, and is well placed to take advantage of the situation. In all likelihood, he will address the Brotherhood question when IT is at its weakest after the defeat in California, but before it strengthens itself in Helios 1. Securitron's Mark II can easily neutralize an already weak Brotherhood chapter. This would allow House not only to prevent future complications, but also take charge of the solar power facility. It is completely in line with everything House does. He plans and strategizes ahead, taking care of any problem before it becomes critical. That is exactly what he tried to achieve with the nuclear missiles, and the Platinum chip would have allowed him to do just that. How cold fusion changes everything. And here's where things get interesting, as the TV show adds elements to the story that the games had not even alluded to, and those elements make the meaning of having the Platinum Chip arrive on time completely different for House. In the first season of the Amazon Prime Video series, there is an unnamed person sitting among Vault-Tec executives in their infamous boardroom meeting. In it is alluded that Vault-Tec would be responsible for dropping the bombs. This character in the show, whom we later find out was not, in fact, the real Robert House, but rather his body double, has been acting as the face of House for the most of the 2 seasons, monitoring the public reaction to his actions and conducting tests in secrecy. The body double trick is the most House-like thing the show has ever come up with. The extremely paranoid, calculating, and self-important person who did not dare to take any risks in attending his own meetings at the boardroom. The man whose paranoia is inspired by the Howard Hughes character, the recluse, the germaphobe, and the brilliant inventor that barely trusted anyone, but surpassed all of Howard Hughes's traits by the sheer technological ability to create a believable substitute for himself. The far more interesting revelation, however, for our alternative timeline is cold fusion. The pre-war timeline from Season 2 shows us that, at least in part, House's survival plans included something other than the biological means. Specifically, he made some deals with Vault-Tec regarding the acquisition of a special cold fusion diode invented by a Dr. Kate Williams to power his robotized non-biological consciousness, capable of existing indefinitely without any risks posed to him by life support system failure. This is best reflected in Episode 5, where he states that the cold fusion diode would allow him to exist indefinitely in his robotized, non-biological form while protecting Las Vegas from imminent nuclear disaster. Having heard about and believing that House's intentions were to provide Vault-Tec with the technology for use as a weapon, Cooper Howard seized the opportunity and handed the cold fusion diode directly to the President of the United States, who was actually a member of the Enclave. Having already realized that House and Vault-Tec were not the unknown initiators of the war that was coming, House decided to contact Cooper during his last days to inform him, "It wasn't me. There are far worse people than me, Mr. Howard." After 200 years, in Season 2 timeframe, Strip became nothing more than an area overrun with Deathclaws. Victor informs the Ghoul that House is gone, since the absence of the diode made it impossible for him to survive to 2296 due to the inability of his biological backup to work without the supercomputer alone. His entire existence depended on getting cold fusion. Without it, survival in any shape was no longer guaranteed. The only way out left was to deliver the diode, after which House's mind would be revived once again. And here's what all of that means for the alternate Platinum Chip timeline. In-game, the chip is everything, but it's revealed in the show that there was another contingency plan House had for himself, a cold fusion-driven digital consciousness that would serve as the endgame of his existence. In the game, the chip helps him upgrade his Securitrons, his security systems, and his life support stability system. His intention was to become permanently immortal through the use of cold fusion. The difference in this alternate timeline would be that House's physical survival is guaranteed from the very first day thanks to the chip. However, because of the missing cold fusion cell, which Cooper had taken before the Great War, the issue of whether or not House survives until 2296 in working order becomes more difficult. It's safe to assume that the chip extends his biological lifespan indefinitely without having to fall into a coma, as it happens in the game timeline, yet it's clear from the show that House was aware that biological survival had a limit, and the answer lay in cold fusion. What changes in a chip-on-time scenario is that House is still operating at full capacity in 2281. He is not gone, as Victor describes. The Strip has not fallen into ruin. The Deathclaws that overrun it in the show's present day, a consequence of the power vacuum created by House's degraded absence, have never been given the conditions to establish themselves, and that reshapes both seasons of the show dramatically. 15 years later, if House had remained in operation, how might the events of the show set 15 years after the ending of New Vegas might have transpired? The answer changes the entire direction the Fallout world is heading. The first season of the Fallout show features a power vacuum. Shady Sands has been destroyed. The NCR is falling apart, and cold fusion diodes become the goal everybody strives for because energy would give whoever possesses it the advantage. In this case, the Vault-Tec Corporation, the gang led by Moldaver, and the Brotherhood become parties trying to fill in an empty space created because nobody actually controls the wasteland at this time. In this alternative universe, this is not the case because someone already controls the wastes, or at least the Mojave wastes, Robert House. It is also safe from any attacks in Vegas Strip because the NCR is in better shape than before. Thus, the plot of this season is centered upon the cold fusion diode that Dr. Wildzig steals from the Enclave, but its significance changes completely as long as there is already somebody who can benefit from it. It should be noted that all of Moldaver's goals, which include restoring the power of Shady Sands and reconstructing the NCR, are only possible due to the destruction of the NCR capital and the loss of energy resources by the Wastelanders that would allow sustaining civilized life. The events of Season 2 would not occur at all had it not been for House, who managed to control Hoover Dam and stabilize the local economy in the alternate pre-bomb timeline. As for the plot of Season 2, it can also be said that its very foundation lies in the absence of House. It becomes known from the pre-war flashbacks that Cooper Howard tried to stop House from acquiring cold fusion, but ended up delivering it to the Enclave. Now, the Strip is a deserted place. House no longer exists, and the Ghoul has to bring back the dead tyrant with the help of the same technology that Cooper Howard refused to use. In the alternate platinum chip timeline, Cooper's pre-war intervention still occurs. The cold fusion diode ends up with the Enclave. The Great War happens. Yet House, using all his abilities thanks to the chip from day one, survives the next 2 centuries in functional mode without cycling through coma and deterioration. When 2296 comes around, the Strip is not in ruins waiting for revival. House is already there, already functioning, already running the Mojave just like he intended to from the beginning. The Ghoul finds his way to Las Vegas. His family still should be cryogenically frozen inside the Vault-Tec management vault underground. But the man he encounters inside the Lucky 38 is no longer a flickering mind waking up from suspended animation on emergency power. He is the fully operational Robert House. 2 centuries of preparation, a complete Securitron army in Mark II configuration, and the cold fusion diode remains the one thing that he could never get his hands on. This is an entirely different story, and the question that the show is definitely heading towards now becomes clear. What does House end up doing once he gets everything that he was supposed to have? AD Astra, everyone needs a goal, something to work towards, because a man chooses, and House has chosen the stars. The long-term aspirations of House are totally clear in many in-game dialogues with him. These are securing New Vegas and Hoover Dam as an independent state, utilizing New Vegas's economic power to finance advancements in technology, and launching colony ships to inhabitable planets within about 100 years after establishing his dominance on Earth to ensure human survival by creating the second human civilization safe from all possible catastrophes. These are no idle dreams either. House is a person that at 22 started Robco Industries, accurately foresaw nuclear war to develop a successful defense system for a city to survive in such circumstances, and survived himself along with the city with the help of his unfinished computer program in the emergency mode. The only thing in doubt is whether there will be enough time for that. From the perspective of the game's timeline, House in 2281 is a man on the move. He has already wasted 200 years in a coma, with a significantly reduced operational capacity. He wants the courier to act fast. Otherwise, he will not be able to solve the second battle of Hoover Dam problem. His operational capacity would drop, and he might become a target for both NCR and the Legion. From the perspective of an alternate timeline, House in 2281 has no reason to be in a rush. He already had 200 years of full operation and dominance within his territory. His economy must have been flourishing, providing maximum benefit during the entire period. The technological research projects he mentions could have been perfected through the centuries. The project on colonizing the space may well have reached its completion stage already. The advanced technology sector that he claims to have launched thanks to the economic boom may have already yielded fruit, and this is what one day makes possible. It's not only a better New Vegas, it's not only a less threatening Legion and a more controllable NCR, it's also a move towards the post-scarcity society of which House speaks, when mankind moves beyond squabbling over the remnants of their former world and begins constructing a new society. The impossible cost. However, there is a more dark and terrifying tone in this entire alternate history, and it would be unfair not to acknowledge it. Robert House is a visionary and likely spot on in his assessments for the future of humanity, which will enable its survival as a species. However, he is also undoubtedly an autocrat, capable of making decisions that affect millions of people without hearing from them and seeing humans more as an economic factor than a social one. These facts are presented quite explicitly in the TV show, whereas they were implied in the game. For example, pre-war House was a person willing to implant brainwashing devices into other people's necks in alleyways to test out this technology. He watched his own body double conducting his business affairs, while he observed how regular people reacted to the image he had created. House's late appearance in the regular game timeline allows other nations some room to grow without House's influence. NCR, for all of its inefficiencies, bloated bureaucracy, overreach, corruption, is a democracy with its voting system, justice psi, STEM, and civilians in control of their military forces. The followers of the apocalypse provide educational opportunities, healthcare, and literacy initiatives across the wastelands without requiring any form of repayment. A house who has already reigned supreme for 200 years is one that has had 200 years to crush all potential rivals. The Brotherhood chapter that could have prevented him from maintaining his technological advantage is wiped out. The NCR presence in Mojave has been cut down to nothing more than what suits House commercially. The independent factions, who could have established their own systems of government outside the influence of House's zones of control, instead spent generations under pressure to integrate themselves into his economy. In contrast to the Mojave depicted in the game, the Mojave of this alternate timeline is a more stable, prosperous, and technologically advanced community. In addition, it is a society in which the question, who decides, has only ever had one answer for 200 years, and the tools which could lead to any other kind of response have been stripped away. House refers to himself as the sole proprietor of New Vegas. Perhaps after 200 years, House has become the sole proprietor of the entire Southwest, and feels no remorse about this fact. It is precisely this question that Fallout, New Vegas was designed to pose, and this show, by resurrecting House from the dead, has reopened that very same question under circumstances where the individual responsible for giving him the opportunity at everlasting life did so almost by accident. The House always wins one chip one day, and all of Wasteland history takes a radically different turn. The 9 warheads that mark the scars around the edges of the Mojave Wasteland might never explode. House might never sink into his comatose state. Tribal anarchy might never dominate the region in the early years after the Great War in the Las Vegas area. The NCR might never establish their foothold in the region and become the regional superpower we know. Caesar's Legion might never grow strong enough to become a threat to Hoover Dam and start the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. The Strip might never fall into ruins in the year 2296, and the Ghoul might come across the Lucky 38 and see someone, or whoever House becomes, keeping it running. The end of the show's second season sees House brought back to life thanks to the very cold fusion technology that Cooper denied him before the Great War began. Now, House has everything that he has ever wanted. The Legion is marching to New Vegas. The Enclave is moving into position behind the scenes. Wasteland history is on the verge of something entirely new. The alternate timeline sees the arrival of House in that exact moment, the exact threat of the Enclave, the exact pressure of the Legion, and the cold fusion technology that he can now exploit, with 2 centuries of preparation rather than 2 centuries of decay under his belt. The alternate timeline sees him in motion, but he's been executing a plan all along. In the city that never falls, in the tower that never goes dark, a man plugged into a giant machine calculates and recalculates until his predictions become a future that he's been working towards in painstaking detail for the last 2 centuries. A future that just may end up looking the exact same as he said it would, and the exact same as he refused to admit that it would come with. War never changes, but the man who saw it coming and built a wall around one city might, with a single day's advantage, have changed what comes after it forever, because the house always wins. If you've enjoyed this video and want to know why bottle caps are still the major currency after 200 years, click the video on the screen.